was a bright, warm Saturday morning. And Samantha looked outside and said, this is the perfect day to go for a drive. So she got in her car and headed out of the city to get out into the country to be able to breathe and to think for just a minute. She was driving down the country road, appreciating everything that was around her, the farms, the fields, and all the beautiful things that she was seeing. But then suddenly, she stopped her car in the middle of the road. She thought she had seen something, but she really wasn't sure. So she backed the car up, pulled into the driveway of a little farmhouse that she had just passed, got out of her car, and started staring at a chicken coop. About that time, the farmer who owned the place came out of his front porch and took a look at Samantha. Samantha looked at him, looked back at the chicken coop, and looked back at the farmer. And she said to him, "Excuse me, sir, but you have an eagle in your chicken coop." Farmer looked at her and kind of smiled and said, "No, you're mistaken. There ain't nothing but chickens in that chicken coop." Samantha said, "Oh, sir, I'm really not trying to start an argument with you, but that bird right there, that is an eagle." And sure enough, standing there on the ground, nearly twice the height and twice the size of any of those chickens, stood this massive, beautiful eagle. Farmer looked at Samantha and said, a couple years ago I was out in my field and I decided to stop and have some lunch. So I parked my tractor, went out underneath a shade tree and sat down to eat. When I did, I noticed sitting by me on the ground was this tiny baby eagle. And I looked way up in the tree above me and I could see the nest, but that thing was so far up there I knew there's no way I'm going to be able to get that bird back up in that nest. I said, I didn't know what in the world to do with an eagle. He said, so I just brought it home and put it in the chicken coop with the rest of my chickens. Samantha looked at him and said, that's not right. She said, do you mind if I try something? Farmer said, hey, knock yourself out. So Samantha walks over, goes into the chicken coop, picks up this bird, puts it out on the end of her outstretched arm, and she looks at the bird right in the eyes and says, eagle, you are an eagle, and you were born to fly. Well, the eagle, not being very comfortable that far off the ground, just kind of flopped off of her arm and went back to scratching with the rest of the chickens. The farmer laughed and said, I told you, he ain't nothing but a chicken. Undaunted, Samantha said, no, this just isn't right. So she took the eagle again, got outside the coop, climbed up a couple bales of hay that were sitting there, stretched her arm out once again, looked the eagle in the eye and said, eagle, you are an eagle. And you were born to fly. Eagle jumps down, scurries across the ground, runs back into the chicken coop. Farmer laughs. Samantha says, I'll be back in the morning. So, before the sun even came up, Samantha was back. She went into the coop, got the eagle, climbed to the top of a mountain not that far from the farm. Got up there on the top of that mountain and again extended that arm, looked that eagle in the eye, and said to the eagle, eagle, you are an eagle, and you were born to fly. Well, the eagle starts looking on the ground for a good, safe place to flop to once again, but suddenly its attention was drawn because at that moment the sun just came up over the top of the mountains. And those first rays of sunlight hit the eagle and gathered its attention. Next, a big puff of air came up the side of that mountain and worked its way under the wings of that bird. And as it did, Samantha heard and felt the whoosh of those mighty wings catching air and beginning to soar. And there was heard out across the entire valley the cry of a mighty eagle. Some people see chickens, others see eagles. I'm here today because I want to talk to you about a group of people that see eagles. My name is Jim Smidt. I'm the owner and the administrator of Cornerstone Cottage. We're a residential treatment center in Post Falls, and we specialize in working with teenage girls that have endured phenomenal amounts of trauma in their young lives. I'd like to introduce you to a couple of them. And I gotta warn you, this is the uncomfortable part about the talk. Our first little girl was born with some difficulties, developmentally delayed. Mom looked at her and saw her as less than enough, less than human. In fact, she would frequently tell this little girl, you know, I love your sister, but I wish you were dead. This little girl was physically abused, sexually abused, obviously verbally abused her whole life. Till finally one day when the family was out on a camping trip, Mom hired a couple boys she found at the campground and asked them if they wouldn't take her out to the woods and leave her. And they did. Took search and rescue 3 days to find her. But they did. Most of our girls come to us from state agencies. Families have either given their children up or these children have been taken from their homes because of the things that they have endured. And they need help and they need protection. And they bring them to us. Another one of our little girls lived on the street with her mom. She was 6 years old. Mom had a terrible drug problem and obviously not many opportunities for employment. So you can imagine the one kind of employment that was available to her in those circumstances. This mom learned that if you bring your 6-year-old daughter with you, the clients will pay extra. And they brought this little girl to us. You want to talk about a group of kids that see themselves as chickens? But here's the good news. They get better. 87% of the kids that come into our program under these circumstances walk out showing marked improvement from where they were when they came in. That's phenomenal to me. These poor, bent, and broken little girls. We could sit here and talk about how do you do that? We could talk about modalities and treatment plans. We could talk about programming and all of those things, and they are phenomenally important and valuable in what we do. But the reality is, the one thing that makes a difference in these kids' lives, it's not a thing. It's the people. It's the people that work with these kids that mean everything. And I got to tell you, there are very few jobs that I can imagine that would be harder than this. These little kids come to us, and you can imagine, do you think they trust adults after what's happened to them? Do you think they trust anybody? They are so filled with fear and frustration, anger and anxiety, that it takes everything they can to just survive the day. And we have outbursts because of it. We bite, we spit, we punch holes in walls, we throw things through the windows. How do you think they would act? how would any of us act under those similar circumstances? But thank heaven there's a group of people, I don't know why they do it, but they do. They come in day after day and they work with these kids. And they get better because for the first time in their lives, they have somebody that believes in them. Somebody that trusts for them to trust. Someone they can rely on. I'm telling you, it takes months for us. Kids usually are here with us for about a year. It takes months for us just to get them feeling safe enough with where they are and who they're with before the real work can even begin. But if we don't get there, it's never going to happen. And so yes, this group of staff comes in every day and they are underpaid and they are overworked and they get the crud kicked out of them by these kids in the early days. And why do they do it? They do it because they see eagles. They do it because they have developed the ability to see beyond the behavior and to find out why. And to help them and to love them and to care for these sweet little kids and to give them a chance at a future. It is hard and it is grueling, but we do it. I know why they do it. I lied to you earlier when I say I don't know why they do it. I know. They can't help themselves. It's who and what these people are. They go through all of this because they know saving these kids' lives means more than anything. And they are good at it. They are very, very good at it. I'm going to pick on a couple of them because they're here. And I especially want to pick on Samantha because she's the one that got me into this mess. I would like to ask those who work with these kids, because it's not just us, the people at my facility, stand up, would you please? Stand up. I'm not asking you, I'm telling you. Stand up. Do we have... Do we have any caseworkers in the crew? Do we have any police officers, probation officers? Do we have any special ed teachers here today? Any of you? Stand up if you're here. There we go. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what heroes look like. Right here, in our midst. I got to tell you, running a facility like ours is expensive. We have about 10 or 11 girls at a time that we work with. We have a staff of over 30 people who have dedicated their lives to those 10 girls while they're with us. It's phenomenally expensive. But you know what? It's a whole lot cheaper than the alternative. And the alternative is do nothing. And watch these little girls' lives crumble around them. And then all of us will have the opportunity of supporting them through their entire lives as they're incarcerated, as they're receiving medical care, behavioral health services, and guess what? You know why their parents treated them that way? Because that's the way their parents treated them. This is a multi-generational problem, and it will not stop. Not until we find ways and to get these kids in to receive the services that they so desperately need. And so we take care of them now. We heal them now. We save their lives now. We save us from the burden, and we save their children and their children's children, because this won't stop until we do something about it. I spend my days with heroes who are changing the world 10 girls at a time. Thank you.